Today on the Bandrew Says podcast, we're going to talk about YouTube making a big ol' oopsie, we're going to talk about Twitter launching a hide reply feature, and a whole lot more, so go ahead and stick around. Greetings, Earthlings, and welcome back to episode 165 of the BSP. My name is Bandrew. This is what I says! Like always, down below there are timestamps of everything that I talk about, so you can skip around and save a couple of minutes, but if you got the time, I would appreciate you checking out the entire episode. If you do want a different version of the show, either audio or video, you can find that at bandrewsays.com, and we are doing something a little bit different today on the video version of the show. In the bottom right-hand corner, I am going to include an edit counter right here. And whenever I do an edit to the show, that number will go up. I am doing this to pull back the curtain a little bit and show you how much editing goes into making this podcast. And hopefully that will destigmatize the idea that editing makes you a bad podcaster. Oh, I'm not good at podcasting because I have to edit. And I do a lot of editing. And don't you dare say, well, you're not a good podcaster, so that's why you edit. Don't bully me. Don't bully me. Mom, I'm being cyberbullied. Let's jump right into the news, and we're going to start with YouTube making a big ol' oopsie-doopsie, or maybe a slight oopsie-doopsie. We've discussed this in the past, but YouTube has rolled out a feature that puts an info block underneath conspiracy theory videos or videos on controversial topics. And it will link to encyclopedia articles or Wikipedia articles to combat disinformation or educate people on certain areas. I'm sure that most of you are aware of this, but this last week, Notre Dame, the cathedral in Paris, nearly completely burned down. There was a big fire, the spire fell, the roof collapsed, all sorts of awful things happened. And obviously, there were news agencies live streaming this and discussing it. Underneath those videos, underneath those live streams of the Notre Dame Cathedral burning, were links to encyclopedia articles discussing 9/11, the 2001 terrorist attack of the Twin Towers, which makes absolutely zero sense. So CNBC contacted YouTube and they received an emailed statement which read, "These panels are triggered algorithmically, and we sometimes make the wrong call. We are disabling these panels for live streams related to the fire." And that is actually it for the entire news story, but now let's talk about how this could affect you as a content creator. I don't necessarily think that the inclusion of these info blocks negatively impacts you at all, especially if it's just mischaracterizing your video or misplacing an info block on your video. But what this does show us is that the algorithm that YouTube uses still mischaracterizes videos, and that is what I believe could actually hurt your channel. YouTube has come out in the past and stated that they do not like borderline content. They do not like conspiracy videos, or the public doesn't like them, and YouTube is reacting to that by saying, okay, well, we will not recommend those videos and we will demonetize them. So that has a direct negative impact on you if you are labeled a conspiracy channel because it cuts back your revenue and it also cuts your distribution because they're not pushing it out to anybody. So if the algorithm mistakenly labels your video as conspiracy theories or coverage of a tragedy, there's a strong likelihood that the algorithm will automatically demonetize it, meaning no money for you, and it will also de-recommend it, meaning they are not going to push your video to any new potential viewers. That is exactly where I think this could hurt your channel and hurt you as a content creator. I should note, this does not seem to be a prevalent issue. This is actually the first time I have heard of a misplaced info block, so I don't think there's anything to be really concerned with. I am just taking this to the extremes and what could potentially happen, and I will link CNBC's article if you want to read it in the show notes down below. Next up, we got a story from YouTube that is actually good news, and this is in regards to the free Super Chat feature that they have been beta testing for YouTube Premium members. But first up, if you don't know what YouTube Super Chat is, it allows you to send money to a creator during a live stream, and then in the live chat, it highlights it in bright colors, making it a lot easier for the creator to pick out your message and reply to it. That's really all it is. It's the exact same as bit donations on Twitch, if you're familiar with that. And I posted about this back in April, the beginning of April, when I noticed it, and I incorrectly speculated that this was a new feature where all users, all YouTube Premium users, were going to get $2 every single month in free super chats. I then found the announcement that you have to agree to before you use these free super chats, and it states that it gives you 2 free super chats or 1 $2 super chat each month until May 31st, 2019. And just this last week, this was confirmed by AndroidPolice.com, and they actually received a statement from the person who runs YouTube Gaming saying, yes, this is a beta test, and we hope you've been enjoying it. And I, too, hope that people have been enjoying this free $2 every single month and been sending it to people, because I think if YouTube sees that this is a feature people want, they may consider rolling this out as an actual regular benefit to being a YouTube Premium member. And I think this would benefit you as a creator for 2 separate reasons. The first and most obvious is, hey, more people are going to be sending you super chats, and that means more money to support you in your content creation. But secondly, this may drive more people to sign up for YouTube Premium, and YouTube Premium members have a much higher CPM, which again would put more money in your pocket and help you create more content. All around, this is just an awesome feature, and I hope that YouTube moves this out of beta and makes it a regular feature that you will get if you sign up for YouTube Premium. If you do want to know more, I will link the Android Police article down below, but you could also check my Twitter because I covered it 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago, actually. I'm ahead of these guys. Next story, Google and Amazon are burying the hatchet. YouTube is being added back to Amazon Fire TV sticks, and Amazon Prime TV is getting Chromecast support. None of the intricacies of this deal, of this burying of the hatchet really matter. The only thing that matters is the customer, and the person paying these companies is now going to be getting the features that they want. YouTube is going to be in more places, and again, this directly benefits you as a creator because the more places that people can watch your content, the better, because there's a higher likelihood that they will actually watch it. Surprise, surprise. And if you are an owner of a Fire TV or what's the other thing? I think that's it. Oh, Chromecast. This is good for you. More stuff to watch. And next, we got Apple and Qualcomm settling. This is another long-standing battle in the tech industry between Apple and Qualcomm, who have been fighting over patent licensing fees for a couple of years now, and both companies just dropped the lawsuits and settled out of court, which is insane because this has been a very heated battle. They have been suing each other in every country, and there have been certain iPhones that have been pulled from the market because they couldn't come to any kind of agreement. It's been pretty nasty between them, but they both settled. And this would mean that Apple could use Qualcomm's modems in the future, and that is good for iPhone users because Qualcomm's modems are much better than Intel's, which is probably why we saw this settlement. With this, we saw a patent license agreement for 6 years with an option to extend for 2 additional years. And this last week, I was listening to MacBreak Weekly, and I think they had a very interesting interpretation of this agreement. And I'm going to be paraphrasing, I don't know exactly what they said, but they said something along the lines of, this shows that Intel modems are not good enough for the iPhone, and we now know how long it will take Apple to create their own modem. And I think that is exactly right. It will take Apple 6 years to create their own modem and get out from underneath Qualcomm's grubby fingers trying to get as much money out of Apple as possible. And I'm not really criticizing Qualcomm. That's how business works. They need to maximize shareholder profit. I get it. It just sucks because if you're an iPhone user, you may be getting a crappier modem because they can't come to an agreement. And that's really it. There's nothing more to say here. I'm just sick of these disputes between companies and these huge lawsuits because it directly negatively impacts us as consumers because we're likely getting crappier products because they can't fix crap in the boardroom. They're just arguing, no, I need more money. No, I don't want to pay you as much money. It's stupid. Fix your crap and give us the products that we are paying for. Give us the best products you possibly can, you dopes. Next up, we got Twitter rolling out the Hide the Tweet feature. In June of 2019, Twitter is going to be rolling out a hide tweet feature. And this is intended to improve the quality of engagement and conversation in your tweets. When I was reading about this, it doesn't sound like it's going to be as awesome and passive-aggressive as YouTube's hide this user from channel feature, but it is going to be an improvement on interactions on Twitter. If you don't know what YouTube's hide user from channel feature does, it allows you to hide a user from channel. They don't know they've been hidden, but you don't see their comments and nobody else on your channel sees your comments. So that person will go to your channel, go to the video that they left a mean comment on, they will see their comment, they will see 0 likes, 0 replies, and automatically think, well, people don't like me, people don't like what I have to say, and they'll f*** off. Sorry for the language, but they will f*** right off. And it's amazing. It's so passive-aggressive. On the other hand, Twitter's hide tweet feature only makes it slightly more difficult for somebody to see the trolls that are leaving comments in your tweet threads. There will still apparently be a button that says view hidden tweets, and if somebody clicks on that, it will allow them to see the tweets that you have hidden. And I don't understand something that I have noticed between Twitter and YouTube. Twitter seems to have a different set of expectations from its users. I don't recall seeing anybody angry about YouTube offering a hide user from channel feature. I haven't seen anybody saying, this is censoring the critics, this is an awful feature. But with Twitter, according to TechCrunch, people have been criticizing them, saying that this is a way to silence critics. I'm not sure why it's okay on YouTube, but not on Twitter. But regardless, I think this is a good move. There are just a lot of trolls on the internet, and these platforms allowing us ways to limit our exposure to them makes using their platforms a lot more tolerable and a lot more enjoyable. And I think that's essential if you're a content creator, because you can't just say, well, I don't like this, I'm not going to be on any social media platforms. It's kind of required if you want to create content on the internet. This last week, I actually put out a tweet regarding this exactly. And what I said is, here's some advice that it took me years to learn. It's okay to block people on YouTube. There's a difference between actual criticism and someone just being an asshole. You don't have to sit there and take abuse. Block the assholes. And if you're a creator, I think that's advice that every single one of us should follow. I just wish that I had known about this years ago because it would have made it a lot less painful. I just think that you need to use the moderation tools to block people or mute them who are attacking you for the sake of attacking you, because unfortunately, people like that do exist. They will say mean things to try to get a rise out of you or try to discourage you from making stuff because they're too scared to do it themselves, or they're just assholes. But please do not mistake what I am saying. I am not saying block all critics. That would be stupid. Criticism is essential. It helps us grow and improve our content, and that's what makes it possible to look back at your videos years ago and say, ooh, that is rough. That is a crappy video, and you never think, well, I improved episode to episode. You just look back over long periods of time and realize how far you've come. You come that far because you do receive criticism, and that makes you a better creator. So do not block critics. Block people who are being assholes for the sake of being an asshole with no actual benefit to you. There you have it. Let's jump to another piece of news, this time from Facebook. Facebook screwed up again. What an absolute shocker. Surprise, surprise. Last month, Facebook announced that millions of Facebook passwords were stored internally in plain text. Turns out, it wasn't just Facebook passwords, it was also Instagram users' passwords. Facebook did come out and state, our investigations have determined that these stored passwords were not internally abused or improperly accessed. Cool! Why don't I believe you, you lying scumbags? Facebook, I don't believe a word that comes out of your mouth. You're the worst. You're awful. I hate all that you choose to be. Why do you choose to be the way that you are? I hate everything about you. Now, I'm not going to go more into depth here, but I will include my standard disclaimer, which I should turn into a soundboard button because I have to say this so damn much because companies don't know how to properly store people's sensitive information. So here we go. Next time there's a data breach, I will just click a button and sit back and watch. Do not reuse passwords between accounts. If you do, that means that when a site is hacked or their passwords are leaked or your login information is stored in plain text, that people now have your password to multiple of your accounts. You should be using a password manager that generates unique passwords for each site. Additionally, if a website has two-factor authentication options, you need to have this enabled. This will ensure that if there is a data breach and your login information is stolen, it will be significantly more difficult for that hacker to access your account. On the note of two-factor authentication, if they have a physical option, use that because there are workarounds to stealing your SMS-based two-factor authentication token that is texted to you. End disclaimer, end story, end of news. Let's jump to what I have been testing, and the only thing that I have been testing is the Lauten Audio LS208. Last week was the final episode that I used this broadcast condenser microphone. I will share some initial thoughts with you. First thing, I love the shock mount on this. It is an amazing shock mount. It looks so good. It's small form factor. This is what the Electro Voice shock mount should look like, rather than a massive eyesore that blocks your entire view of anything in front of you. This is a perfectly sized shock mount, and it does a good job. But moreover, as far as the tone of this microphone, I was not a fan of how boosted the treble and air was when it was in the neutral mode, which is why I use this with the low pass filter set to 10 kilohertz. It's what made it tolerable, and I also had the foam windscreen on it as well to dampen down some of those high frequencies as well. It also didn't do a very good job at rejecting plosives, which is why I had to use I had to use a pop filter. I don't remember the model number. The rejection on this thing did do a surprisingly good job, though, especially for a condenser microphone. I don't know how they did that, but it did a surprisingly good job. Maybe it's because I rolled off everything above 10K with the low pass filter, meaning there's less frequencies to pick up. It's a possibility, but it did a pretty good job at rejecting background noise. Also, I don't think that the sensitivity on this thing is a huge selling point. It's negative 48 decibels, if I remember correctly. People typically like condensers because, well, you're getting a condenser sound, a more full frequency response, but also the sensitivity is high enough that you don't have to worry about the preamp. At almost negative 50 decibels, I imagine there are some interfaces that will struggle to drive this thing. You may have some preamp noise introduced because of that on top of the self noise of this thing. And those are my initial thoughts on the LS208. I would love to hear from you on YouTube in the comments or on Twitter @BandrewSays. Did you like the sound of this thing over the last 4 episodes? Do you think it sounded better than what I am using right now, which is the SM7B? That's right, I'm back, baby. Or do you think it's just a trash microphone that's not worth $600? Let me know your thoughts on this, and then I will have a review coming out on it in the next couple of months, hopefully sooner rather than later. Now let's jump to what you had to say, and the first comment comes from Fat Lol's Radio. He says, in regards to the Alex Jones story, I feel that journalism is no longer what it was originally defined as when it comes to mainstream media. On both sides of the political spectrum, the main media outlets seem to only put out opinion pieces that they disguise as journalism in order to inspire outrage. Notice there wasn't nearly the amount of outrage when Joe Rogan brought Alex Jones on his podcast last month. What these outlets don't seem to realize is that when they ignore context to inspire outrage, all it does is solidify the narrative of fake news and push anyone on the fence over to the opposing side, as we saw with the Covington student protest story. Things need to be reported with full context and on a case-by-case basis. Nothing is cut and dry the way that both Fox News and CNN want to present it as. Like I said in regards to the conspiracy delisting on a previous episode of the BSP, deplatforming only makes things worse because it's essentially pandering to those incapable of drawing their own conclusions. Do not blindly follow. Question everything, do your research, stay in the center until then so you can maintain your sanity, and definitely don't reject discussion on the matters at hand. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. Sorry for the book. Fat Lol's Radio. Yes, 1,000 times over. I think you hit the nail right on the head here, and let me explain why I think that is. The majority of news consumption seems to have moved from television and radio to online, and with that move, we've seen the devaluation of the view, meaning that a view is worth significantly less to an advertiser when it's viewed online as opposed to when it's viewed on a television or a radio. I don't know why that is, but that seems to be the case. Because of this, news outlets need much more enticing titles and outrage-inducing stances on their stories, because that would likely lead to more shares, which will then lead to more views, which will ultimately lead to more advertising dollars making it to their company. And unfortunately, this type of behavior by news outlets appears to have led to an increased divide between parties, and by ignoring context, I again think you're exactly right that contributes to the argument that mainstream media is fake news, which is not beneficial for anybody. It's a dangerous game that these companies have been playing, and they seem completely oblivious to it. Somebody just needs to get into a position of power at some of these news outlets, slap them across the face and say, wake the hell up. Do you not see the problems that you're creating? You all are crazy. And lastly, I want to agree with your point that you made to question everything, do your research, and have discussions regarding matters at hand. That is something that I've enjoyed quite a lot over the last couple of months. There are quite a few people in my Discord server that I will discuss controversial topics with, and we have very different points of views on many of these topics, but we keep it civil. I don't know how we do it. That's impossible nowadays. You can't be civil with somebody that disagrees with you. You have to shame them and scream at them and try to get them fired. No, you can keep it civil. You can have civil conversations without screaming at each other. And I don't know if they feel the same way as I do, but every single time we wrap up a conversation, I feel like I have learned something, gained a new perspective, and that I am a better person for having had that conversation. I think that's something that society as a whole can learn. We've forgotten that you can be civil with somebody that you disagree with. Remember that, everybody. Be nice to one another. Thank you very much for the comment, Fat Lulz Radio. Amazing insights. Next comment comes from Lauten, and he says, the only issue I see with this is there is a line that you draw between having a crazy idea that would involve people harming themselves or others versus just having crazy ideas. Where I am going with this is that it is crazy that there are people who use junk science to explain why they do not vaccinate their children and share these ideas with others as proof as to why they should not either. This to me should be a bit of a line, as it could actually do harm to others as a direct result, and to me this should be viewed as yelling fire in a crowded theater. This isn't violent, but at the same time it is very harmful, and to me it is one and the same. Lauen, thank you very much for the comment, and I understand exactly where you're coming from, but I somewhat disagree. Before anybody jumps down my throat, let me point this out. I think vaccines are good. I think they are essential. And if I were to ever have a child, I would 100% vaccinate said child, because I think vaccines are good and essential. So do not jump down my throat and say, Bandrew's an anti-vaxxer. Bandrew's an anti-vaxxer. I'm not. Shut up. Again, stop cyberbullying me. You guys are so mean. Knock it off. I don't know why I'm making you guys out to be bullies. What I don't agree with you on is the fact that this borderline dangerous speech should be ban-worthy. The reason I disagree is that I don't think the government or YouTube should be responsible for protecting gullible people. I say that because the next step in my conspiratorial mind would be people are too stupid to determine that communism or capitalism or Christianity or Islam are evil and dangerous, and people have committed evil acts under their names. So we're going to go ahead and ban people who advocate for these beliefs or hold these beliefs, because we need to protect people who are too stupid to make up their own minds or make an educated decision on a certain stance. To elaborate a little bit more, if we were to ban anti-vaxxers because it preys on the gullible and people who just aren't well educated in the area of medicine, wouldn't we also have to ban alternative medicines or those religions that don't allow for medical treatment, because those don't directly call for violence, but clearly it will directly lead to harm of people because they can't seek medical attention, or they are getting bad medical advice from somebody who pushes alternative medicine. No, don't go get chemotherapy. Take these herbs instead. It seems like there's a direct parallel there between anti-vax talk and people saying, no, don't get chemo, eat these plants instead, that'll fix the problem. I suppose if I had to boil down my concerns to one sentence, it would be I'm reluctant to give any entity or person that amount of power because although currently it might be used for good, who knows who's going to end up in that position in the future? And that power could very easily be abused, whether it be to silence dissenters or critics, or maybe they would want to ban certain religious beliefs. I just don't think putting a tool in place that would allow that type of power is a good thing or a safe thing because you don't know who's going to be wielding that power in the future. And to wrap up my response to you, I guess I should offer an alternative solution to the problem. I think the real way to stop the spread of the anti-vaxxer movement is through education. I think the growing anti-vaxxer movement is indicative of a failure of our education system. Instead of only teaching people how to remember historical events or remember equations or orders of operation, we should be teaching critical thinking and research practices. Those are tools that people will be able to use for the rest of their life to make good decisions and assess situations. That's my take on it. I don't think we need to ban people because gullible people fall for what they're saying. We just need to teach people how to think critically and assess situations properly. I hope that made sense, and I appreciate you sharing your point of view on this topic area. Appreciate you, Lauten. Last comment comes from Time Roller Studios, and they say, congrats on the success first of all. Now the question. I don't know if you use OBS for streaming, but it uses VST plugins for audio. What type of plugin do you use to alter the pitch of voice? When I record my voice, it sounds higher pitched than I would like. Thank you, and once again, congrats. Time Roller Studio, thank you very much for the kind words. I appreciate you very, very much. The solution is very, very easy. It is called a pitch shifter,
which you can hear on my voice right now. But it doesn't sound natural.
Whenever you use a pitch shifter, it makes your voice sound funny, it makes it difficult to understand what you're saying.
And everybody knows that you're using a pitch shifter. I think that you should just become okay with your voice. Speak into a microphone a lot.
And you will eventually get used to it. I didn't like my voice at the beginning either. I still don't really, but I'm okay with it. This is how my voice sounds. There's nothing I can do about that. I'm not going to be able to go in and get a vocal cord transplant. And as I've said, pitch shifting plugins just sound funny, so I would not recommend using them. I hope that helps Time Roller Studios. Appreciate the comment. And now let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment. All right. If y'all got any questions, go ahead and send them to askbandrew@gmail.com, and I will answer them on an upcoming episode of the podcast. And also, don't forget, if you want, you can send in audio or video questions or inputs or anything. Saves you from listening to me read, which is painful. First email comes from Red, and he says, Bandrew, am I allowed to screen record and repost your content on my personal YouTube? I planned on re-recording your Glenn Beck mic question and also adding a couple of different episodes, re-recording of myself that you played of me on my own YouTube channel, podcast, or whatever I feel for the time being. Obviously, with a link to your full show on what we're re-recording a part of. Am I allowed to do this? Can I do this? Must I stay under 30 seconds? Must I be covering the video with a picture-in-picture image? Am I only allowed to post screenshots and voice over these types of things? Should I send you a copy of the video and ask permission before doing this? Do you think we should give American Liberty a weekly 5-minute spot/video on your show? Truly though, he's awesome. I understand some of these questions, but also asked in case there's others out there with similar questions. This copyright stuff is extremely serious and scary. How do I understand the difference between fair use and these outfits that try and claim up our content because we may have called them out on something? The true reason I messaged you was because I was asking if it was okay with me re-recording and posting your content. I don't want to piss you off as I only started this content creator journey because of you. I don't want to mess up and get a copyright claim against me over dumb shizzle. I'm still holding you to my challenge on getting the amateur radio license. Cheers, Red Culver. Red, thank you very much for the email and great question. Absolutely, this is allowed, and I support it. Keep in mind, I am not a copyright lawyer or a copyright expert, so take what I am about to say with a grain of salt. My understanding is that criticism falls within fair use. I also don't think that there are any time limits in regards to the clips you use for fair use. I think anything is up for grabs as long as it is actually fair use. I don't think there's a law that says, well, it's fair use if it's under 5 minutes, but if it's over 5 minutes, I don't care if it is still criticism or parody, it's no longer fair use. I don't think that's a thing. Also, as far as copyrighted music, I would not use a single second of it because YouTube's algorithms and also podcast players and podcast distributors are starting to crack down on people who use copyrighted music. I would not use a single second. Those record labels, they're out for blood. Do not use copyrighted stuff that is so clearly copyrighted or so easily claimable. But for me, I am not part of some massive copyright network that goes out and automatically claims and takes down video that is re-uploaded from me. That doesn't exist. So as far as me, go for it. Go ahead and copy the video, criticize it, critique it, add content to it, and upload it. I'm not going to claim you. I don't care. I think criticism is good, as you heard earlier in this episode. One thing I would advocate for, though, is including the link to the original piece that you're criticizing or including a clip from. That's just a little bit of a respectful thing or a good faith effort. So if you are criticizing it, your audience can go ahead and click the original thing and see or understand the entire context of the piece. So to reiterate, go for it. Clip this podcast, comment on it, criticize it. More power to you, my friend. I am not going to copyright strike you. And also, I would not argue if American Liberty wanted to send in clips every single week, but the amount of work that seemed to go into that clip was insane, and I would never ask anybody to do that amount of work every single week. But if American Liberty wants to send in a clip anytime he wants, I will absolutely include it. That clip is amazing, but I imagine that American Liberty wants to work on making content for his own channel rather than just being included on my podcast. But I agree, his clips are top notch there, pal. Thank you very much for the email. Next email comes from Heather. Hey, Bandrew, how are you? There was recently an internet apocalypse for about 10 hours. Mobile data was still working, though I've mentioned that coverage can be spotty here in parts of New Zealand, and let's say mobile tethering wasn't offering a strong connection for other devices. So I was just wondering how long you've been without internet before due to an outage or technical glitches. What have you done in those instances, or what would you do? How would you survive an internet outage for a day, a week, or a total internet apocalypse? Forever! How long could you last without it? Thank you for your time, Heather. Heather, thank you very much for the terror-inducing email. God, that is freaking me out. The panic is starting to set in. For anyone who doesn't know, Heather is the host of Sunshine and Power Cuts, an amazing podcast about off-the-grid living and well-being. You should check it out. You can find it at sunshineandpowercuts.com or geeksrising.com. That name sounds familiar. It's almost like that's where you can find this podcast, geeksrising.com. Check out Sunshine and Power Cuts. To the question, I believe the longest that I have gone without the internet is maybe 6 to 10 hours due to an outage. The worst part was that I was working from home that day, and it made it impossible to get any kind of work done, which drove me insane. I ended up having to take a vacation day because I couldn't get any work done, and I can't just charge time for not doing any work. That's not, you can't do that. So I ended up burning a vacation day, sitting there and checking the internet. Is it back up yet? Freaking out. It was awful. But as far as surviving an internet outage, let me go ahead and walk you through my thought process in the order that I thought of them. YouTube. That's obviously the first thing that came to mind. I've spent years building podcastage, and an internet outage would just kill that overnight. There's nothing I could do about that. It would be inevitable because people consume that on the internet. If there's no internet, you can't get podcastage. Luckily, on my computers, I still have all the final reviews that I have done, all the videos that I have done regarding microphones and audio gear. What I would do is go ahead and pick 10 or 15 of my best reviews, burn those to a DVD, find the addresses for all these tech magazines, write them with a cover letter, the DVD, and say, will you please let me write for you and be your audio tech journalist, please and thank you? And try to find a way to continue to review audio gear in a way that would be beneficial. I don't know how I would do that because I would be losing the entire ability to actually demonstrate the audio that I am reviewing. So it would be a huge setback in my opinion. Maybe burn CDs with the audio files, the review audio files, and send those to people. Maybe make a DVD set of all my microphone reviews and let people buy them. That's a way to do it. Mail order podcastage review. There you go. That's something that I thought about, but it would be awful. It would be awful. The next thing that came to mind was communication, and this would be a huge, huge loss for me because a lot of the people that I interact with, I only interact with them online. I would lose all contact with them, assuming that I don't have their phone numbers or their snail mail addresses. I would lose all of that. It would kind of force me to get out of my comfort zone and go make friends with people locally and risk becoming friends with somebody who doesn't like audio gear. What a nightmare. That would be the worst. I would probably end up just spending a lot of time at Guitar Center, like you did when you were a teenager and you couldn't afford anything, so you would just go sit at Guitar Center for hours and annoy all the employees because they know you don't have money to buy a freaking guitar pick as opposed to a guitar. You're wasting their time and you're being noise pollution. That's what I would become at my age. I wouldn't mind texting or phone calls or snail mail or anything, but the loss of communications with all the people, all the friends that I have developed online they have the exact same interests as me, that would bum me out for months, if not years, if not for the rest of my life, knowing that I don't have that same group of friends that love audio as much as me. That would suck. As far as entertainment, this wouldn't affect me at all. I wouldn't be too concerned since I have started collecting way too much physical media. In the past, I have had internet outages or I have watched YouTube videos and it would just buffer every 5 seconds to the point where I rage quit and think, well, now I don't have anything to watch or anything to listen to. But now that I've acquired enough DVDs and Blu-rays and CDs, I can actually listen to stuff and watch stuff. If the internet were to go down, if my internet connection was just too bad, or if the licenses for these albums or movies was revoked by iTunes or Netflix or anything. I'm set in regards to entertainment, and I got plenty of books, and I got my Kindle thing all set up with all the books downloaded, all the audiobooks. I am golden as far as entertainment. Then, Amazon. This one would suck. This is a horrifying prospect. The idea of not having next day delivery or 2-day delivery, or I'm sorry, New Zealand, maybe 2-week delivery. I'm sorry, that has to suck. I use Amazon way, way, way too much. I use it way too much. And I look for movies. I look for CDs that are hard to find. I look for weird audio cables, weird microphones that Guitar Center, that's really my only audio store here, would sell. I rely a lot on Amazon, and it would be crushing to close that, to lose that. I would have to go to Target to buy essentials, and I'd have to go to Best Buy and Guitar Center and say, will you please special order me this cable that will take a month and a half to get here? It would suck. It would be an absolute nightmare, and I would hate it. But it's something that we would have to live with, and we'd start to get those local stores coming up again. Mom and pop shops coming up. And maybe I could start an audio store. That's what I'll do. I'll start an audio store and I'll order all the cables and I'll have it on stock. There you go. An audio store and a physical media store. I'm going to become very wealthy in this. How long could I live without it? Without the internet? I don't know. I like to think that I would be fine forever. It would just take a while to acclimate to the new landscape, but it would be a very long adjustment period, to say the least. There have been times where I lose internet for 5 minutes, and it's so embarrassing to admit this, but I turn into a child having a damn temper tantrum. It is an embarrassing and disgusting and pathetic thing to behold. It's the worst. So if that occurs with 5 minutes of internet outage or slow internet or a web page not loading, what would 5 years look like? I don't want to see what I would look like in 5 years. It would be pathetic. But that was an amazing question and thought experiment to go through. How long could I live without the internet? What would happen if I lost the internet? And what would you do if the internet disappeared forever? That's a question I want to pose to everybody listening to this. I want you to answer this. Send in an audio, send in a video, send in a comment on YouTube, send it in on Twitter, send in an email. Let me know, what would you do if the internet disappeared forever? And how long could you live without the internet? Great question, Heather. Appreciate you. Again, sunshine and power cuts. Next up, we got an audio submission from an amazing person. Here, let's jump to that right now.
Hey, Bandrew, this is Ben in North Carolina, longtime follower. I'm a little bit under the weather, so I'm a tiny bit raspy, but I think I can get through this. Thanks for taking my question. Have you ever noticed how many different kinds of good, and I use good in quotes here, how many different kinds of good voice production styles there are? I mean, I'm sure we all have, but it's kind of fun to take a diverse inventory of it, of all these different voice production styles that are considered good. You know, sometimes I think on it, and I think it's a bit rattling sometimes when you listen to podcasts back to back that have totally different approaches to recording and mixing voice. So one podcast might have big, fat, punchy consonants, and then the next one might have that real thin, flat Neumann U87 sound that they have at NPR. Then you've got that real bass heavy, that real low-end heavy, broadcasty kind of FM radio station sound. Then you've got that smooth proximity warmth that I associate with people like Roman Mars. Then you've got Jesse Thorne with Bullseye and that real just simple clarity that he has. And then on to the 40 kilobits per second of Mark Maron. Then you got voice recordings where it sounds like they've scooped out all the mids. And then you've got production that embraces the mids. And sometimes I even like that really just that totally unprocessed, straight out of the microphone sound, just to appreciate its raw qualities. But anyway, we can listen to episodes of Bandrew Says, and we can draw our own conclusions about your production preferences and what you think sounds good. But what would you say are the features of a great voice recording? Again, we have all these different standards of good, the thin NPR sound, the big fat FM radio station sound, whatever they're playing on Gimlet. What would you say are the features of a great voice recording? And conversely, are there any voice production styles out there, like accepted voice production styles, that you simply can't stand? And why? Thanks, Bandrew. I know you work hard on this stuff, and I always appreciate the work you do. Signed, Ben.
Ben, my God, good vocal production qualities. See, your recording that you just sent in. That sounds incredible. I love how your recording sounds. It sounds amazing for your voice. And if anybody doesn't know, Ben is the host of the Tourette's podcast, and it is an absolutely amazing listen, an amazing show. And I love it so much because it teaches me stuff about Tourette's that I didn't know, and it works to destigmatize Tourette's. If you are interested in learning about that, check it out. It is an incredible show, and he always sounds incredible. You can find it, tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. 100% recommend it. Keep up the great work there, Ben. Let's jump to your question. These are amazing questions. What are the features of a great voice recording? I know this may come as a surprise to some people given what I focus on, where I am a microphone and audio channel, but I am surprisingly very forgiving when it comes to audio. There are few things that will make me shut off a show, and all of them are very easily avoidable. Of course, there are going to be different answers that I could give depending on the medium that the audio is going to or the goals that the recording has. So I am just going to focus on podcast audio because that's really where I focus. The features that I think are required for a great voice recording are there needs to be good clarity, the level needs to be consistent, processing needs to be subtle, and it needs to be easy to listen to. So let's go ahead and dive a little bit more into each of these topics. First, it needs to have good clarity, meaning it's very easy to understand what is being said because podcasts exist to convey information. If people are not able to understand what you're saying, why are you even recording a podcast? that is 100% essential. And this could be affected by multiple things: mic selection, mic technique, and mic placement, pronunciation, and all of the processing you do. And we'll talk more about processing right now. Second, the level needs to be consistent. You should not have your audience reaching for their volume dial or their volume rocker constantly to increase and decrease the volume to make your podcast listenable. This is really difficult for somebody to diagnose on a single person podcast that's being listened to in a quiet room. If I were to listen to a single person podcast in my studio here, it would be hard for me to say, well, you know what? I'm turning up and down the volume a lot because I wouldn't need to. But the moment that you start listening to a show in a loud environment, whether it be a car or whether it be the gym, you notice it immediately. Or if you're listening to a multiple person podcast, that becomes very apparent as well, because every single time a different person starts talking, if they're at different levels, you'll be increasing or decreasing the volume. Not only will that ruin the recording, in my opinion, but it will give your audience the worst experience and make them not want to listen again, because now they have a task. They have to ride the volume fader the entire time they're listening. Podcasts are great because you turn them on, you put in your earbuds, you put your phone in your pocket, and you get going. That would ruin a recording, in my opinion. Third, the processing needs to be subtle. There are, of course, different schools of thought here, because radio style production is as far from subtle as you can get, but people love it, probably because they are used to it. I personally prefer the more subtle processing. First, if I can hear the gate opening and closing, whether it be chopping off the beginning and the ends of your words, or when it opens up, I hear all the fan noise going on in your room, that makes for an awful sounding recording because it is distracting from what you're trying to say. You need to have a very subtle gate and very subtle noise removal. Noise removal is a very dangerous plugin to use because you can destroy the sound very easily by just turning it up a tiny bit too much. You start to sound underwater and it sounds awful. 2, compression. This is a touchy subject, a controversial topic as well. It's difficult to tackle. I personally prefer the more subtle compression, which can be achieved by multiple compressors being run in series, so no one compressor is doing heavy lifting. Each one is just doing a little bit, taking off a couple of decibels here, a couple decibels here, and a couple decibels here. That's the best way to get the natural compression. Now, I will admit that on this show, I have started to get a much more compressed sound. That's because I do this video component to the show, meaning I have to be entertaining on video. And if I were to sit with very good microphone technique and not move off axis the entire time, yes, I would be getting better audio, more consistent audio, and I would be able to be a little bit more subtle with my compression. But that is horrifyingly boring to watch. So I go ahead and sacrifice the audio a little bit to make it a little bit more entertaining, which is a bummer, but given the road that I have gone down, it's a cross that I have to bear, and I gladly go ahead and bear that cross, and I compensate for those fluctuations and moving off axis a bit with more aggressive compression, unfortunately. 3, EQ is slightly more to taste, but my approach is not to change the tonal characteristics of a microphone too much. There are some people who know exactly how they want the final product to sound, and they will EQ any microphone that they use to sound a certain way and get that final product the way that they want it to sound. My approach is I am using a microphone to get this microphone's tone and this microphone's qualities and characteristics. Therefore, I am not going to make massive changes to change the tonal sound of a microphone. I am going to make minor reductive or additive EQ to fix minor issues with the microphone on my voice, whether it be nasaliness, whether it be harshness, whether it be boxiness or boominess or anything. I do EQ to repair the sound rather than change the sound. That's my approach to it. I don't think this necessarily will make or break a vocal recording though. It's just my personal approach to equalization. And finally, for reverb, I am okay with a little bit of room sound getting into a recording. I don't think that ruins a recording. Of course, depends on the final product you're going for. but I think we've all heard the classic omnidirectional microphone in the middle of a table between 4 people, and that is one of the rare instances where I will just shut off a show. I cannot listen to that. It drives me insane, and I hate it. It's a very easy solution. Just fix it. Fix it. You freaks, fix it. And the final topic that I wanted to talk about was the show just needs to be easy to listen to. As I said in one of my recent reviews, I believe it was the HyperX Quadcast, it's unoffensive. I think unoffensive audio for podcasting is great because the most amount of people will be able to enjoy it. And I think my above critiques, or criteria rather, for a good audio recording for voice will all lead to a very easy to listen to recording. Nobody should hear a recording and think, oh my God, what is going on? This is insane. It's so compressed. There's so much reverb. It sounds so bad. I can't listen to this. People need to say, hey, that sounds pretty good. They need to pull an iDubbbz. Pretty good. There are obviously going to be different schools of thought on production based on the anticipated location of playback. So that's why I think multiple production styles are okay. This is just my personal taste and my personal preference. Then you had the question, are there any voice production styles out there that I cannot stand? Again, I am going to reiterate this again. This is my personal preference. I cannot stand the FM radio style super compressed and super limited sound. I think that is so incredibly unnatural, not necessarily painful, but just awful to listen to. I understand why it's done, because people listen in cars, and I am sure there are some kind of regulations in terms of output levels and maybe technical limitations going through the radio waves of levels that you have to hit, but it's just too jarring for me. Not only does it not sound good to me, but it also gives me this feeling like it's fake, like the host is putting on a character and not being honest. I know this sounds a little bit insane, but it's like the stereotype of a used car salesman. Used car salesmen have this very standard, stereotypical voice. Hey, how you doing over there, bud? You want to buy a car? And when I hear that type of radio production, I get the same feeling. That's not that real person. That person, that's not them. They are somebody else. This is a character that they are playing. And when I listen to podcasts and voice recordings, I prefer to hear the real person, the real person's voice, and how they actually are if I was sitting in the room with them. That's my take on the FM radio broadcast. I can't stand it. It's jarring, unnatural, and fake to me. The other seemingly accepted style, I put that in air quotes, that I can't stand is overboosted low end or trying to alter your voice to fit a widely accepted tone. It seems that some people think a 6 decibel low shelf at 120 hertz makes them sound manlier. I am a man now. I am all that is man. No, it doesn't. It makes you sound insecure. It makes you sound boomy and awful. It does not make you sound like a big manly man. It's obvious what you're doing. You're tricking nobody. You're tricking nobody. Don't think you're getting away with it. And when I hear this type of production, I automatically think that the host is not being their true self. Again, being authentic really comes across, and it's really important in my production requirements or my ideal audio production, clearly. I think that people need to just accept their voice and not try to alter it to fit into some idea of what you think a podcaster or a radio host should sound like. I think that is ridiculous. The thing I could equate this to is famous singers. Let me go ahead and try this. When you hear a famous singer, who do you think they sound like? You think they sound like themselves. But when somebody comes out with a unique vocal style, how many times do you hear somebody trying to emulate that? When you hear that person emulating them, that copycat, 5 years down the road, how frequently do you remember that person who was trying to copy Taylor Swift or I don't know, other singers? Probably very infrequently. I simply think that people should accept their own voice because unique voices are amazing. Unique voices tell people, hey, this is me, this is how I sound, and I have a unique voice. When somebody hears you talking on a radio or on another show, they may say, hey, I know that's Bandrew. Hey, I know that's Ben. And that is amazing. You may not have the bassiest voice, like me. You may not sound like Mike Delgadio. That's fine. It's fine. Accept your voice. Let it be what it is. You don't need to become some radio broadcast, super bassy, super compressed, super limited sound. Be yourself, both in terms of how you're recording your voice and how you're processing it, but also in how you're conveying your content and the information you want to get across. Be your authentic self rather than trying to emulate somebody else, you dopes. Okay, there I go. I'm emulating Bill Burr by saying dopes. Do as I say, not as I do. Ben, I hope I sufficiently answered your question. And to reiterate, I think your audio is some of the best that I have heard. I love how it sounds. It's just so easy to listen to and so smooth. And I am going to drop a drama bomb for everybody. Guess what microphone is using, if I remember correctly? The Electro Voice RE20. Look out, Larco, RE20. I'm not saying I like it better than the SM7B, though. It's a good alternative. I'll say that. Ben, thank you so much for the amazing audio question and the audio submission. You are a legend. Again, tourettespodcast.libsyn.com. Check it out. That is going to wrap it up. Personal thing, I will say this. I got a nasty email, maybe not nasty, but a very critical email about my political coverage last week. I took the criticism. I am going to go ahead and in the future make 100% sure I make it abundantly clear. I am not a political podcast. I am not going into politics. I am not going to get into political discussions in here. Really. That's all I'm going to say. I appreciate you sending your criticism. I hear you. I'm going to make it abundantly clear. If I ever do cover politics, I'm a dope. You should not take my word for it. Don't listen to me when it comes to politics and political analysis. That's not my bag, baby. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. Again, BandrewSays.com for different versions of the show, GeeksRising.com for different podcasts that are amazing and help you become a better creator. And go check out Podcastage.com. I did it. F you, huge domains, you scumbags. Talk to you all next week. See ya.
This has been a Geeks Rising production, your executive producer of Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.
Okay. After the outro update, for anybody who's just listening to the audio, 4.5 hours later, it was 81 edit points. That is not including the vocal effects that I added in, or on the video I spliced between two different angles. 4.5 hours later. And the 81 edit points, I guess I should tell you what that was. That ranged from shortening silences to also restarting entire segments, because I am trying to be as concise as possible or not provide any kind of incorrect information. So 81 edit points, 4.5 hours, and my mind is melted. Happy Easter, by the way. What a wonderful way to spend an Easter. You don't need to do 81 edits, just so you know, but that's what I do to try to get my podcast to the highest quality that I can, and that is how it ended up. There are some obvious edits, other edits, seamless. Again, I'm going to kiss my fingers and say, excelente, but others, trash. I'm working with what I got. All right, that's just an update for you in case you don't want to check out the video. I'll see y'all next week, really. Bye. Happy Easter.